Hello, my dear patrons. Welcome to this little AMA interview thing. I am here with the irreplaceable Brooke Jennett. You will know her in the voice, not just for the many things she has done, be it 13, a favorite of all horror podcasters and all horror podcast friends. We've got Olive Hill. We've got the occasional PodCube cameo, which you may know her for. And also, you will know her as being the voice of Molly in Camp Havenside. So it has been just about 5 months since the wrap of Camp Havenside, and something that's been happening during that time is that I've been kind of looking back on this project that was 18 years in the making, took a very long slice of my life. I was working on it since I was 19, and I've been thinking about how it sort of has differed from where it was in the beginning to where it is now, not just because of how much it has changed as a story generally, but also because it is an audio form now, and it required other people to come in and help create it, which made me then start thinking, I'm actually very curious what these other people and these very talented individuals think of the story and what their experience was like. And then I figured you guys were also quite curious. And so I, as you know, put out a little call. You submitted some lovely questions, and we are going to get into it. But the first one is a question by myself, a very simple one. How are you today, Brooke?
I'm good. Gosh, that's a great question. Now I'm trying to ground myself in reality. What year, day, time period of my life are we in? If I'm 30, is it the summer of my life? Like, have we done the spring?
Let's see.
In
That's
this
involved there.
in this titular point, maybe where we are transitioning seasons of my life, I'm doing good. It's been a good work day, and I was looking forward to this. So I'm excited.
That's a very good answer. So the first question I think that I got from my patrons, and it's kind of a good sort of, it breaks it open, so to speak. How was working on Hemophobia different than working on other podcasts?
Well, we've talked about this, but the patrons might not know. I've been doing 13 since 2020, and I'm not a huge horror fan. I like slashers and gory movies, and I like horror manga, but mostly I'm a scaredy cat and I don't like anything scary. But I've always wanted to be a scream queen. Like ever since like when I first started being like, okay, I can watch horror movies. I can be an adult about this. I couldn't. I don't want to. But if it's a slasher and if it's like literally a scream queen role, I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is what I want. I want to make horror. I think only the deeply scared can make really good horror.
I believe that very strongly.
I think that hits all of us differently, but 13 is a narrative-based podcast, like narration-based, and I did a lot of the narration in our first season and still do a lot of the narration, and I love it. And we got really good at that, but I went to college for theater, and I really miss being able to flex all of those acting muscles. And it was so fun doing a like, full cast audio drama in the horror space. It's been a really long time since I felt like I was able to really spend time on a character. And Molly was a great character to spend that time on.
Yeah, I hear what you mean. I remember when I was entering the casting phase of Camp Havenside, I had a bunch of different ideas, and I mostly wanted to cast people I happen to know, just simply because
Mhm.
I wanted to hang out with my friends, for that's the best way to kind of put it. And I remember thinking, I was like, well, Brooke, a lot of what she does with 13 is like very, narration based. Like, I wonder, like acting wise, I sort of wonder like how it'll sound like. And then not only the auditions, but just like throughout the recording of the piece generally, I was like, wow, yeah, okay, we
Yay, that's good.
I think we hit the right switch on this one. And I'm also glad to hear you comment on the character of Molly specifically, because that actually leads me into the next question from the patrons, which was, how did you find your character's voice?
I mean, I'm from Western Kentucky,
Mm.
but my perspective from that is I always knew that I was growing up in the Bible Belt because my parents are from Southern California and I was raised secular.
Mm.
So as I was exploring all of these things that my friends were being raised in without question, it was very much like a buffet for me. I was like, I'll go to church and see what that's like. And I'll do this and I'll see what that's like. And for my friends, it was this like unquestioning reality.
Mhm.
And that really shaped the way I think I see people now. And not just Molly, but maybe specifically Molly to me. All of the characters in Camp Havenside seem so real and like people I knew. And that makes it so much more heartbreaking. I think that for people who are looking at a story like this from a perspective, if you can, in the United States of America right now, but like where they think it's really, truly just fiction,
Mhm.
that's kind of doing it a disservice because these characters are so directly representations of real people. And Molly's just a girl. Like she's just a teenage girl. She's not spectacular. She's just amazing in that she is everything that being a young person embodies. And I think a lot of the characters are like that. And I think that's why what happens to them is so sad.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't know. She's just real. She wasn't hard to find the voice of because she is exactly who she says she is, you
Mhm.
know?
I think it's a really beautiful way of putting it. And even just you saying that kind of, again, not to exaggerate or overstate, but it just makes me even more affirmed that you were certainly the right choice for Molly, because I honestly feel like I think you've understood her in more advanced ways than I could even from writing her. Because Molly was certainly, like you say, pretty much everybody in Cape Havenside. I mean, they were inspired by people I really knew, and when I was growing up Christian, and I like that you were able to, find the actual humanity in this individual, and like
Mhm.
you let that kind of be the compass. That was something I sort of noticed throughout the performance.
Well, that's
Um,
your like dream as a writer, right? We have a joke with 13 where Ian writes so many of our episodes that every character is just him in a wig.
yeah, yeah,
But really, as a writer, all you can write is you. It's just you and all of these different ideas of you and all of these different. A lot of people are going to be like, that's not true. I write different characters. We know you do. Yeah, that's not what I mean. But like, you're just writing what you know. And every time you make a piece of art, you hope it's a collaboration and that somebody is bringing something else to this character and adding layers.
yeah, yeah. I think that's absolutely true. The question that sort of falls out is very similar, but was also submitted by the patrons and could have sort of a different dimension. What about your character did you most connect with? I suppose even just on a personal level.
I think that I'm just thinking about this on the fly now, like not really. I mean, I didn't know these questions beforehand, but the first thing that comes to mind is I wasn't the kind of teenager that Molly
Mhm.
was like, she's really outgoing and seems really confident, but it's also completely clear to me as an adult exactly where her insecurities lie. And like watching these moments where what confidence she does have is like being crumpled by the world around her. That's so desperately sad. And I don't know, Molly is just like really funny and weird and like so happy to be alive.
Mhm.
And I feel like those are the things about her that I really relate to. And I think it gives her so much depth that I think women, AFAB people, these characters, teenage girls specifically, like the most hated, like
Yeah.
kind of person is the teenage girl. But she has so much depth because she just likes being here and she just wants to meet people and talk to people and engage with people. And I think those are all of her best qualities. And even as everything is happening around her and she does get isolated, I feel like that aspect of her can't get taken away. And I
Mhm.
feel like that's really, really cool about her as a character. Like what she holds on to is this sort of just this part of herself that wants to experience life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's also a pretty beautiful way to put it. Like it's, that part of her sort of will endure forever despite everything that happens to her and around
Hmm.
her. and there's certainly some tragedy, but that doesn't predicate that. I recall when I was sifting through like the audio files that everybody had submitted, I was sifting through your and Mason's combined files and listening to it, and there was one point where uh, Mason just kind of offhandedly he said, "Well, he's like, I just kind of realized he's like, it just kind of hit me that Molly is literally slut shamed to death." And
Yeah.
your response was, "And she's just a kid."
Yeah.
That to me was the most like it's like, oh, like I was cognizant of that, but like to hear it put that way was very like, yeah, like Molly's a child, like a teenager,
Yeah.
like
This isn't what we're here to talk about, but I just started a book.
mm,
And the whole book is about it's a nonfiction piece that someone put together. They grew up in the Ozarks. And the whole book is about why are poor white women dying at a higher rate than they were 10 years ago, as
mm,
all of the other rates of life expectancy increase. And it's all of the reasons that Molly was slut shamed to death. Like
yeah,
Camp Havenside is fantastic, but it's based in real life.
mm,
And I found out about this book because I bypassed a paywall and I was illegally reading an Atlantic article. Um and the article had caught me because it was this sort of all of these girls that we grew up with, the ones who stayed home are pregnant, have had 3, 4, 5 kids by now. Not all of them, but like a lot of the girls that
yeah,
we left behind. That's what their life looks like. And it's just not the same for the boys. And, that can sound like a broken record, but it's so desperately actually a factor of life. Like these girls are dying. These girls are not, and before they die when they're 14. Like they have everything taken away from them. And it's not that something happens to them, it's that nobody like cares about them anymore once it does.
yeah. That
It
is absolutely that is true. I mean, like that's sort of the dark tragedy of it all. And I do feel like I don't know. I think there are sort of drops of that situation that kind of bled into the writing
Mhm.
of Camp Haven side because a lot of the folks I grew up with and went to church camp with when I was young, they got kids now, and it's like they're in that very situation. Um, the story of Camp Haven side is very odd. I think it's kind of highly ambiguous and uh strange at times. How was it trying to perform in a story with an often tenuous grip on like a literal reality and these frequent surreal moments and weird personal interactions, especially with Molly, who at times is or isn't possessed depending on the scene? How was it trying to act like to convey that, but also stay real at the same or grounded, maybe is a better word.
Pretty easy. I think that, I mean, I had read all of the script that I had, which wasn't necessarily all of it, but it was all of it that pertained to my character. And I don't know, maybe it's more of a sign of the way that I think. But I guess if you think of it this way, it's sort of like it's a lot easier to be following that script as your character is experiencing it
Mm,
than it is to try to play that against a bunch of straight characters.
mm,
Like everyone is sort of devolving into this madness. The whole story is sort of devolving into this madness, and it all makes sense. Like you kind of know why it's happening, and the story, anything could have happened to any of these characters at the end. I didn't know how it was going to end, but I think from the very beginning I knew pretty much what it was going to feel like for them.
mm,
That is kind of like what we were just talking about. Camp Havenside is like very surreal and like magical and fantastic. But at the same time, that's just a representation of a lot of these very real things.
mm. I'm glad to hear you say that because I think I kind of try to do that with just about everything that I write is, the kind of old Edgar Allan Poe approach of like the supernatural events have a direct tie to the psyche of the people experiencing.
Hmm.
And so it pleases me to hear you say that. Hopefully we stick the landing next time. Everybody
Oh
cross your
yeah.
friggin' fingers. Let's see what happens. Um, this is a question from the patrons. What was the hardest line read that you had to do?
Oh, yeah, they're not going to be happy with this. The answer is anytime that she has to go, what? Or, okay. Like, everything else is fine, right? I think everyone is always like, oh my God, that was so grueling. I can't wait to hear how hard it was. It is so easy to lead into emotion. It is so hard to be normal. We have a joke in 13. We were trying to record something the other day that was just us talking, and we were just trying to do a mic check, and it was four of us in the room. And so we have like a little studio in our apartment.
Mhm.
And every time this happens, Mason was like, okay, just talk to each other. And we were just all silent. There's this in the Olive Hill bloopers, there's this famous part where this guy Grant, who worked with us on that show, is to me and Bridget is like, just pretend you're friends, just talk. And we're both just like, do you like going to the grocery store?
Oh God.
So yeah, anything that's a one-off natural line is so hard, I think.
Yeah, that's actually I think there's a lot of truth to that because um it was actually even kind of hard to direct moments like that because um it's hard to like communicate the atmosphere of being at camp and being at church camp and like
Hmm.
how that would play into like your everyday inflections. It's certainly easier to explain like the emotional experience of like, some of the more devastating moments in the story,
Hmm.
but try and even myself having done some of the many of the voices myself, like trying to act like remember when you were 16 and at camp, it's like that's kind of it's not as easily accessible.
Yeah, and like none of us are 16, and those scenes didn't make sense to do all together, but
Yeah.
I feel like Camp Havenside does not sound like it was recorded async, and that's definitely, I think, due to your directing. And it's just like crazy because those are the moments that are sort of the hardest. Because even if we were all on a call together, we're not all playing Ultimate Frisbee. So like that's super different.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's absolutely facts.
Are
I
you
was
Did your mug say nevermore? Did you just make an Edgar Allan Poe reference?
I didn't even put that together.
And you're just like,
It's got like the
and by
first
the way, are you
stanza.
being paid? Is this an ad?
I'm being paid by the spirit of Edgar Allan Poe. Oh God, I wish I was.
Hmm.
No, it's funny. I considered recording. There were many scenes in Camp Havenside that I wanted to record, uh, everybody live kind of thing. But I actually talked to Ian Epperson. For those of you who don't know, that is a member of the 13 team. Also the actor who played Dennis Reeves in Camp Havenside. Um, but he kind of gave me the strategy of like, oh well, if you know how the scene's going to sound, then you can just do it individually with you on the call. Um, Even though there were some scenes, especially like with Jordan and Mason, that we did all of us together. Um, which kind of actually brings me to the next question as well, specific to you, is that despite and the reason I say brings me in is because the scene that I think of most when I ask this question is the kind of final scene in Thursday where it's the kind of you and Jordan kind of going back and forth and that very intense scene. Despite the graphic nature of the show, I recall us having a lot of fun while creating it.
I
Uh,
literally almost interrupted you to say that was my favorite day
yes,
recording. It was so fun.
yeah. What about it was fun? I'm curious because I definitely had fun, like even just myself, but I wasn't on the ground, so to speak.
Well, Mason and I have a ton of fun recording together, and we're in the same room. But Jordan and Mason work together on Podcube, and Jordan and I have talked and stuff, but we've never met in person. And we had done Podcube together that one time, but had never like Jordan had not acted a lot before this,
Mhm.
and I'd never seen him act. And it was like that old feeling of like being in a play. You know, you get thrown into a room with a bunch of actors, and you're super excited to do it, and get to know all of these people, and just getting to play off of a person you don't know.
Mhm.
And when they are delivering, it's so fun. It's so fun to play in that space. I think that's a huge part of it. And a lot of the moments where two characters are playing off of each other within the story. Again, I think Ian's advice was really good specifically to this script, where like normally I'm a huge fan of synchronous recording, but it's not always feasible. And so it needs to be worth it. And I think that most of the moments were directable on their own. But Jordan and I were directly interacting with each other in those scenes. And that's why I think it was so fun. Like we were actually playing off of each other. And I think that really mattered. I think that in retrospect, if the casting had been different or if those scenes had been recorded separately, it might have been a really different moment.
I believe that with all of my heart, because when I was sound designing that particular scene, and in case it wasn't clear to those listening, we're referring to the second to closing scene of the last Thursday episode. I've referred to it colloquially as the exorcism scene. It's not really an exorcism, but that's kind of the best term for it. And when we were recording that, or when I was sound designing that, I was listening back to it, and of course, in my head with sound design, I'm always like, "Oh, I want it to be huge. I want all these things going on." But listening to you and Jordan going back and forth, I just kind of told myself, just hold back, just don't do too much, because I wanted the chemistry between you and Jordan was so good and was so captivating. I did not want anything to distract from it, and so I actually had a more stripped back approach to that scene. At least that that slice of it.
It takes all different kinds. I'm crazy, and I was like, that was the best day of my life. Loved it. Would love it. Well, and the thing that was so cool about it is like exactly what you're saying is the build in that scene is really linear. I think that the thing that people might not understand when they listen to Camp Havenside, if they're like, oh my God, that must have been so crazy. The whole story is really linear. Everything is happening in a line. It's like pretty easy to follow. We pretty much recorded it linearly, even though different parts were happening. So for each actor, it felt that way. And that was it. That was the titular moment. It's happening. And it was like very cinematic and very literal. And the stakes were very clear. And so that's a pretty fun shoot day, you know?
Yeah, it was. It's the first moment where things kind of really start going to hell. Like in a very open way, but it's been on the way the entire time.
Yeah.
And the sort of second fold of that, and this might be more questions about just fiction generally, is that what do you think it is about recording like some of the most god awful things ever cast into RSS that produced an environment that was like fun and even humorous sometimes? Like, do you think that like about the content of the scene?
First of all, we need a joint t-shirt for 13 and hemophobia that's just the most god awful things ever cast into RSS.
I'd like that.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately and fortunately, I was a theater major. So a lot of my degree is sort of like a fever dream. It's like something that happens to you. It's something you do. It's not something you know how to tell people about. But mostly, I got like a degree in empathy. And that was great in so many ways. I had never been in a play before I went to college. I thought I was going to be a creative writing major, which my college didn't have. I don't know how like academia works. And then I was like, no, theater is what I need to do with no plan to work in theater. And I have not. But I feel like I was right because it is so important. Like ultimately at the end of the day, I'm a writer, and being a writer and an actor is kind of the same. You're just doing different things with it.
Yeah.
And it's all storytelling. Storytelling is it. And when the story is so clear, when your goals are so clear, God, it's like imagine you're telling a joke to someone and you've built it up really good and you know it's good and now it's time for the punchline. That's why those scenes are so good. That's why those moments are so great. It's because you've earned them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's like there's already the ramp up, and there's
Mhm.
already the way it sort of felt in my head, and this is grotesque, but of course it is because it came out of my head. I was like, there's the scene, it's almost like the story has been just filling up with blood, and now it's time
Mhm.
to spill it, kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot here.
Well, and that's a thing, right? Like when you're talking about playwriting and structure, because unfortunately I did it at like an academic level, it's catharsis. That's what it
Yeah.
feels like. It's like the blood bubble is bursting. It's Lavinia in Titus Andronicus. It's a lot,
Yeah.
but it feels like a relief because it finally happened.
Mhm. Yeah. And I sort of wanted it, and like on the coast or on the tide of that relief, that's sort of, I think, maybe where some of our laughter came from.
Hmm.
Just because I recall that recording session very fondly. I mean, we were laughing, making jokes. A lot of bloopers came out of that scene, which is hilarious to think. But
Oh, the bloopers are great.
yeah, no, that's yeah. My you guys, lovely patrons, have had the benefit of experience. And something I have told the patrons in a behind the scenes thing, but I forget if I actually told you, was that one another thing that could have easily been a blooper for that scene, but actually ended up in the show, was that when Calvin approaches Molly in this very intense scene, at the time Molly is performing oral sex on a few male campers, and when Calvin comes up, he says, "Molly, what are you doing?" And Molly's response is, "Serving the Lord." And in the booth, this was not in the scripts. In the booth, you simulated it with the whole thumb and mouth thing. And Jordan very authentically, I heard in his audio very authentically, just said, "Oh, Jesus Christ."
Yeah.
It was such an authentic response. I was like, I have to keep that in. Like, I have to keep it in. So, like, if you hear back and you hear Jordan mutter that, that's just Jordan Reed's actual astonishment in the moment.
That is one of those weird moments which are super rare. I think people who don't like who haven't acted or made something might think that these things happen all of the time, but that is actually chemistry is just playing off of each other. And it
Yeah.
is hard to create organically. You sort of just have to like trust and go for it and be cast well. Everyone has to be doing their jobs. Like
Mhm.
everyone has to be doing their jobs for that to work, and everyone can be doing their jobs and it can still not work. But when it does, pun intended, it's like a lightning strike. And that was one of those weird moments where we were in the booth and we were recording by booth studio, whatever. We're recording it. And I was like, I think this is how it's going to sound. And then I was listening to it and it sounded exactly like I remembered. That never happens, especially not in podcasting.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. That was something Campaign had told me as well. It's just like sometimes the best cut is, just the one that kind of comes to you. Other times it's the 80th friggin' run.
Yep. You can't predict it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that a lot. What was it like listening to the finished product once all the sound design was in place and it was, fully released? That was another question from a patron of ours.
So I work at a bakery and I am not currently hyperfixated on podcasts, but when it came out, I was like, I'll be hyperfixated on this one. And I was, and it was super annoying because I was waiting for the episodes. But so I think I listened to pretty much every episode, if not every episode. I have a commute to work that's like 30 minutes and I work at 4 a.m. usually. So it's like 3 a.m. and then I get in the car and then I'm just listening and it's perfect because I'm just in a car by myself and the highway is dark and I'm hearing everything. So it would be my commute to and from work a lot.
Mm,
Um and it was so cool because I knew the story, but I didn't necessarily know how it was told. Like I didn't read it necessarily with all of your narrative elements drawing it all together. And Molly is in enough of it that she has her own sort of ending. So then it was cool to see the rest of the story continue.
mm,
And my personal favorite actor of all time, Kayla Temshiv,
mm,
of course, is so great to listen to all the time. Everyone was so amazing. I think really it was really fun because I wasn't listening for myself, you know? Sometimes you're listening for yourself, but
nice.
I don't even think I necessarily always noticed if I was talking because I felt like everyone fit so well into the scenes and into the moments and into their characters that it was one of those rare things where you just, despite all of the terrible, horrible background knowledge you have of what it takes to make everything, you just are listening to a story.
Yeah.
I was just listening to a story.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's very, again, very. It pleases me to hear that. It is kind of funny how a lot of people, I forgot, I sort of forgot when I was making this show that pretty much the only thing that happens after Timothy's death, really, nobody except for me and Kayla Temshiv knew what happened past that.
Mm-hmm.
We were the only people who knew. And so like, I think it was Mason, I think, who had asked me like, so like, what is this like the end of the story? And I was like, oh no, there's like a whole nother episode. And he was like, what happens? And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot I didn't tell anybody that.
I
But
honestly don't know if Mason knows. I don't think he's finished it, so you'll have to ask him.
oh yeah, it's I'll hold his feet to the fire on that one. No, I'm just kidding. And
No,
I
I'm
will
like, don't
say,
spoil it because he'll be really excited to get there.
yeah, I won't give it away. Also patrons, Kayla Tempchip, if you're wondering who that is, fantastic voice actor. They've been on 13. They've been in a whole lot of stuff by Bloody FM, and they also played Grace and the Word in Camp Havenside, and their interview is going to be coming very soon as well. So how have your, be it friends, family, fans, people in your life, how have they reacted to your role in the show? Like, have you had any odd reactions to a show, or any, good ones, bad ones?
Well, for me specifically, it's not really that much of a departure from what I normally do. So it's not like I don't think it would shock anyone that I was in Camp Havenside. It's very on brand. I mean, we talked earlier about me growing up in the Bible Belt secular. Like, I was the bastard kid who by high school was like touting the scripture of the flying spaghetti monster. Like, I was like, doing my own thing.
Yeah.
But I will say that like it's been so cool to see our patrons' reactions to the show, because like our biggest connection to, well, really the only reaction I care about is what our patrons think of our show. Everybody else is whatever. These are our real fans. And it was so cool to see them showing up and going out and listening to Camp Havenside and like loving it and then talking about it. And because we haven't done a lot of, like, me and Ian and Bridget aren't prolific voice actors. We make our show and we've occasionally gotten some requests for other things. So it's really cool to get to step outside of our 13 bubble and do other stuff. We're available for voice acting and we love it. And so it was really cool too to see it in a sphere where 13 and Hemophobia are not, they're similar shows. They're not the same kind of show. They're similar enough that it's the perfect kind of crossover. Our audiences can really enjoy the other show. And so that's my favorite reaction. And also like the only one I necessarily know of. Every time I recommend the show to my friends, I have to be like, so because you used to be religious, this is really more of a if you're ready kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like,
I actually had a patron, Drew Kellogg, if you're out there, talking about you. But she mentioned, she was like, a lot of my old friends from seminary might like this show. However, I don't know if they've worked through enough of their religious trauma yet to do it. Which it is certainly I kind of wanted to create an experience, like something that was, almost like a vehicle. I don't want to say a vehicle for navigating that topic, because that sounds kind of like, that's above my pay grade, so to speak. But like you say yourself, it was horror bled from reality. I really wanted that to kind of come through, and hope it did, because I'm not doing any more work on the freaking thing. It's done now.
The funniest thing is that often when I was thinking about Molly's character, there's this podcast that my friend recommended that I listened to, and I like it. I think it's called Be There in 5. It's just like a very chill white girl podcast, and she's always like, she's a Swiftie. She's talking about stuff. It's like a talk podcast. Yeah. But I was just skipping around her feed when I was listening to her. I can't remember the host name because I'm a terrible person. But her show's really cool, and she grew up in the Bible Belt, and she's kind of in this place where she's like, I'm religious, but like that's all terrible. Politics, blah blah blah, shouldn't be part of that. She watches The Bachelor. We know each other. We're white women. It's fine. And so I was listening to her show, and she had this episode that was about going to church camp growing up and what it felt like just experiencing the sort of double standard for men and women. And it's a very tame viewpoint on it. Like, she's not radical. She's not extreme. She's very palatable. Like, she is just like a regular gal in the world. But that is what I kept thinking about when I was thinking about Molly.
Mm,
Because that's who Molly is. Like Molly is just a person, and we are all so shaped by our experiences, and we either get to grow up or we don't. And sometimes we get to grow up and our whole life was so hard that we don't get to grow into the person we could have become.
mhm,
And it takes like one person, like one adult in your life to just like love you unconditionally and be a sane constant.
mhm.
And there's just so many people who don't have that. And even though it might not be Gilly, who's the big bad, and Gilly isn't really, right? Like that's the thing. Is like the big bad is this idea that you can't be your own person.
Mhm.
And I don't know, that was so over that I just remembered that was like a real thing that I thought about a lot when I was thinking about what Molly was going through, because it really just doesn't matter to her until it does. She doesn't care. Like it's not a big deal that this religion doesn't exactly represent what she wants
Yeah,
until she can't have anything unless she does what it wants.
yeah. She's just a regular person going through life. I tried to intentionally inject that into to both Shane and Molly because a lot of the other characters, the Judith most prominently, um, they were raised into this way of life. It's not the story, the events in Camp Havenside probably are really just a continuation of their life up until that point. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
whereas Shane and Molly, they strike me as two kids who you might have seen in like Juno or something.
Yeah.
It's like going about their everyday life, and then all of a sudden they're part of this dynamic that they didn't see coming because they're friggin' 15 years old. Like, it's like,
They're just kids.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah. And I do think it makes me happy to hear you say that about Molly in particular, because not just because Molly is, um, I think I guess in a direct sense, the one who gets the most possessed, at least maybe collectively by the end of the show. Like her identity and her agency is constantly getting yanked this way, that way by
Mm-hmm.
forces. Um, but the fear of not being able to be your own person, I mean, that's at the heart of really everything I read. I think that's why I write about possession so friggin' much. But
Mm-hmm.
eh, who can assign a science to that shit? But yeah. Um, okay, so we've covered quite a bit of territory here. We've got one more question from our patrons, and I saved it for the end because I personally believe it to be the most important one. Is what is your Gilly plan, or rather, how would you fight Gilly if you came across it?
Ooh, that is a very good question. Because it's funny that you asked that right after what we were just talking about, because I think actually the most relatable thing to me about Molly as a character is how susceptible we both would be to like cult theology.
Mm,
I'm just like, I'm waiting for it to happen to me. I'm from like I grew up in Western Kentucky, but like I was born in Southern California. I know what I can be bought into. It's cool. I know what my stock is.
yeah, yeah.
Like I
Really
have a
strong sound
deadhead
and
mom. It's who knows. And I think that that's the thing. Like when you talk about possession, I think Molly is the most possessed because, in a way, she's the most susceptible. She has the least conviction. She's just like a kid. That's it. She literally is just vibing. She's
Mhm,
like, yeah, sure, God's fine. Like, she has no opinions other than she likes her friends and wants to hang out and like likes boys. Those are the only opinions she needs. She
yeah.
is, again, literally a child. But all of these other characters, and Judith does come to mind so directly and so painfully, feel so driven to this conviction. And I mean, I think quite intentionally, Judith and Molly are these sort of analogs for each other. But
Mhm,
and it's so unfair and heartbreaking thinking of like, I think the most heartbreaking part of the story is realizing how much Judith cares about everybody and like desperately wants to be their friend,
mhm,
and how manipulated and turned against her own peers she is.
mhm.
And so, like, I guess my answer is like, I don't know, I think Gilly would win. But if I was going to try to fight Gilly as an adult woman, but as a teenager, Gilly would win. But if I was like, as a 30-year-old woman trying to fight Gilly, it's just like, well, it's just easy. right? That's the thing. It's like Love Island rules. I'm like not a child, so I just won't. Like I don't know what to say. Like the susceptible party is people who are so vulnerable. And that is what makes Gilly scary. That's what makes all big bats scary, is that they prey on vulnerabilities, and the most vulnerable among us are the ones that we're supposed to be protecting.
Mm.
So I guess the way Gilly wins is by doing exactly what Gilly does. And so um aggressively teaching all kids to critical think. Like critical thinking, man, that's my soapbox.
Yeah, no, that'll wither Gilly right up. I do I one phrase I kept finding myself coming back to with everybody when I was trying to explain what the fuck Gilly is. Not even just conceptual, well, I guess sort of conceptually, but just like trying to explain to the actors, like, so here's kind of how this is happening. Is I kept repeating the phrase, um, shame to Gilly is like blood in the water. Like it gravitates toward, it can smell shame on you, and it kind of almost grows out of that wound.
Mhm.
Which I think maybe that's why there's so much friggin' plant imagery. I don't know. I can't figure out what the hell's coming out of my head. But
Yeah. I mean, that's it though, right? And it's not just religious trauma, but trauma in general that feeds off of all of these different kinds of toxic shame.
oh yeah.
And that's why the most powerful thing like any one person can do is cultivate critical thinking and also cultivate a sense of self love and worth, because that's it. That's what it's going to erode.
Yeah.
At their core, everybody who's a bully or who is like acting in a way that seems cruel doesn't like themselves.
Hmm. I think that's fair. I think that's the heart of hemophobia right there. Um, well, all right. I appreciate you very much speaking with me. I've loved thus far getting to hear, just for myself, just selfishly, quite honestly, just getting to hear the actors' perspectives, because you don't really know until you ask them and you're not on the ground, you're not in the process of being
Mhm.
anymore. It's all over, and you can look back. Um, and I knew people were very curious about, you lovely patrons were always very curious about Camp Havenside, and I hope this has given you some new angles to think about when it comes to it. In the meantime, if you are not familiar with Brooke Jennett's doings, get your life together. And most of you are 13 fans, I believe, but if you're not, give it a swing. And even Olive Hill, I enjoyed Olive Hill quite a bit. And yeah, you'll certainly be hearing more from Brooke Jennett in Hemophobia, assuming she's down. So
Oh, she will be.
that's good to know. All right, well, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Keep tuned for some more AMA interviews coming along soon, and in the meantime, have yourself a good day.